I did it. And so once upon a time, in a housing projects in New York City, a long time ago, I was on my way to a party to acknowledge the younger DJs who were in there doing their thing. And I was already a street celebrity DJing in Mount Vernon, New York, and these places, in the Bronx. And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna go and tell these DJs, you know, have a good show, do your thing. I never made it to that inside. I got just to the building, and the first angel approached me, and he had on a ski mask. So I thought I knew him, but I looked in his eyes and I recognized that I didn't recognize him. And he had a gun. And so I said, I don't think I know him, but the gun looked familiar. That's the way it is in the hood. Check that shit out. The gun was familiar. And by the time I reacted, I felt another one in my side. So I looked down, there was another pistol on my side. And they started walking me around to the side of the building. And I said, I think I'm getting stuck up. And then another guy met me. So it's three guys. And I'm like this, like going through my pockets, taking everything. I have my big DST. I don't know if you ever saw that thing. Snatched that off, my ring my mother bought me, like, and I'm standing there going, I'm actually getting robbed. And I'm literally, where that desk is the precinct. And all the cop cars are lined up right around here. And these guys are robbing me right there. And so I went home. I was devastated. I was devastated that here I am, celebrity in my neighborhood, and the guys in my neighborhood. And I didn't recognize any of them because they had a mask. Robbed me from my big DST chain and all of this stuff, and I was really upset. So a whole week goes by, and I'm seeing people snickering and laughing and all this, and I'm really upset. Now they're getting called, D, we gotta record Rocket. We're doing this session. And so I went to the studio, and I was so upset that I did that solo in one take. Wait. So I was going home that day, and I realized, I found out when I got home, they said, I know who did it. It was Angel. So one of them's name was Angel. And I recognized that, you know what? Years later, when the record blew up and all of this, and then I'm flying around the world and I'm doing all this stuff, I'm sitting on the tour bus and I'm going, Angel. I'm here because of an angel. Angel went to prison for that. He gave himself up because I had an older brother who scared people, and two of them dispersed, and Angel, one guy surrendered, and Angel, two of them went to prison. I don't know about the third guy. Angel went to prison, he did like 4 or 5 years. But I wasn't thinking about it, and I said, the success of that record was based off of that moment in time that allowed me to do that in one take because of these guys who told me without telling me in words that you don't need jewelry, you don't need gold and all of this stuff to be who you are. You are you, and your skill set is your skill set. Because believe it or not, they weren't going to be angels because I had enough money to make them ghosts. But I decided that the angel thing made more sense. And so these angels, I thank them today because I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for the 3 angels. End of story. And so now I will demonstrate what it was that I did that day, and I'll try to do it as close to my memory as how it happened. Bear with me. You don't know that shit happens sometimes. Where's my headphones?
We have.
And before I start, let me shout out a couple of people. Because the DJ culture has been overlapped into the hip hop culture. And a lot of people don't recognize certain DJs, like Grandmaster Flowers, like Disco King Mario, Cool DJ D. Like these are people who, Pete DJ Jones, these are DJs who were DJing before when the hip hop culture began. So the hip hop story is part of a story that starts out with the DJ culture that it overlapped into. So the hip hop story is obviously Kool Herc, who we call the father because he gave us the platform for the B-boys to come together and reconnect to that energy that we are now calling hip-hop, which most of us who've done our research know that we can see it being done in the 1930s. We were playing our parents' records, so you know, it's an older story, but in time, the truth and the understanding of what that actually is starting to come out. It really didn't start in the 70s, it's much older. I know because I'm not gonna tell you my age.
Why don't you tell me a story? Please tell me a story too.
You know, I think I'll tell you the story of my life.
You tell me. I want to hear too.
I was born in Animus, North Dakota, a long time ago, see? And now I'm lucky enough to be here with you.
Yeah, but what's happened in between? Yeah, what else happened?
Well, it went pretty much like...
This is one of the members of my original hip-hop group, King Pinshaheen, one of the illest lyricists on the planet. An angel. Give it up, DXT!
My God, I was out there in the audience going like, oh, it's over. Wait a minute. Oh man, that was awesome. Okay, in my career, I've had the privilege of being mentored by a little bit by the man named Q. I'm talking about Quincy Jones. Every time I've been around him, he's dropped these little nuggets that have changed the way I produce music, the way I approach life. So even though we don't think of Quincy as part of the hip-hop world, I thought this would be a great place to quote Quincy. Because like I said, he drops these little nuggets. Quincy wondered, what is it about hip-hop and rap that scares people? Quincy's response was surprising, but not really. He said, it reminds me so much of bebop. Being hip is being aware. For Quincy, it was simple. Hip-hop started the same way as bebop. Hugh said both art forms are, and I quote, young, black, urban males with a lot of energy, expressing the conditions of their life in a very poetic way, in a very dramatic way, in a very theatrical way. Quincy continued, very powerful stuff. To Quincy and so many other artists in the world of hip hop, they see the power of music as a tool to reach the hearts and minds of millions of people. There is, as Quincy points out, a special responsibility to sing a melody without poverty to end the suffering caused by extreme poverty. But outside the hood, it wasn't a message that was heard right away. In 1973, 50 years ago, hip-hop music was born. In 1983, 40 years ago, hip-hop was a niche being embraced and unapologetically nurtured in the ghetto. MTV was 3 years old, but they had yet to play a single hip-hop video. Now, here in 2023, hip-hop is more than mainstream, it is the culture. And unbelievably, yeah, give it up. And unbelievably, hip-hop is middle-aged. And as we look back, it's important to honor those pioneers, the heroes, those who weren't afraid to say exactly what they thought. Those whose message was so strong that it eventually busted down the walls of resistance. Yes, the mainstream media culture resisted every step of the way because hip-hop was yet another art form created by Black America, like jazz, like R&B, like soul. Which brings us to a very special presentation. And to do it is an artist who I'm always happy to see here in NAMM. Brian Hartgroove is a producer and bass player for the legendary group Public Enemy. That's right. He is also the founder of the group Resonant Alien, and right now he's working on albums with Fred Schneider of the B-52s and Stuart Copeland of the Police. He's a very busy man, but this is a priority for him. He is right here tonight with us with an award that he created to honor the most important figures in music. He named it the Impact Music and Culture Award. Please welcome Brian Hartgroove.
Hey everyone, how you doing? I really can't tell you what this means to me, but I will try. And I'll try to make it quick. In 1974, I saw Earth, Wind and Fire, their first arena tour. Okay, and I believe the engineer for that tour is here. Lon, are you here? Anyway, he was working with George Massenburg, and I just met him today. I wanted to be a police officer when I was a kid because then, as now, in the hands of the right people, it's a noble profession. All right? And when I saw Earth, Wind & Fire, having been bussed into sort of hostile environments, that concert was in a deeper hostile environment. And I was surrounded by people that would have, outside that arena, been possible enemies, okay? And watching them perform with all of these beautiful people around me made me realize the power of the discipline of music and the messages that it can carry. And I realized that being a police officer, I would be too late to help anyone. I'd be dealing with someone after they'd been victimized or after they had victimized someone. So music was my calling at that point. And the bands that meant a lot to me weren't exclusively bands that had powerful political or social messages. I loved bands that didn't have that had great music. Ohio Players is one of my favorite bands, although they had political messaging. If you read it, The Police had political messaging that a lot of people didn't catch. Bob Dylan, Bruce, which I think a lot of you would remember, okay? So when Chuck, after watching me do a number of projects, I guess he was watching me closely, when he called and asked me to join Public Enemy, I was a fan. I had 3 favorite bands that I just followed all the time. It was Earth, Wind & Fire, The Police, and Public Enemy. And when Chuck asked me to join, how many people can say they were asked to join their favorite band? Not many of us. And then it led to me working with a lot of my favorites, okay? Watching him up close deal with all the nonsense that he's had to deal with before I joined, and a lot of nonsense he had to deal with since I was in the band, made it very clear to me that my admiration for him was correct and well applied, if that's a way of saying it. And so when I was asked when Chuck agreed to come in and participate in the talk that we're doing tomorrow at noon here, then the idea of an award came up, and I said, let me come up with an award. Came up with a name. Then it took a couple of days to come up with a mission statement for the award. And that mission statement, after reading it later, a couple of days later, I realized it was actually what mattered to me. You know, having an impact, a social impact, and doing your art on a high level, which Public Enemy did. And I'm like, wow, it couldn't be more perfect. Sort of like what the story DXT was telling, you know? It sort of wrote itself. And the honor I've had of being in that band that helped launch other opportunities for me is immeasurable, you know? And to ask Chuck to now join me so NAMM can honor him means more to me than anything I can say to you, you know? But I know that Public Enemy has touched all of us, whether we dug the music or not. I'll tell one short story. We were on tour in Australia when Barack Obama was president-elect. We did the tour in December. He'd already been elected. And the media had asked the obvious question, what do you feel about first black president? And it was Chuck and I doing the interview. I think it was in Melbourne somewhere. And Chuck was sitting next to me, and he can corroborate this or say, Brian, you're lying. And he was sitting next to me, and he gave his answer, a well-considered answer. And then I said, I'd like to add to that, I think Public Enemy had something to do with that, with Barack Obama being elected, because the message of the band came at a time that helped a lot of young non-black people in America realize that black men are not something to be afraid of. Because the message of Public Enemy, if you take a song like Fight the Power, although the music is from the perspective of black men, because that's what Public Enemy is, black men in that group. A song like Fight the Power was about fighting the power of injustice, which everybody suffers from. Okay? And I think a lot of young folks applauded that in their mind, just like you did, and sort of softened the soil for people to vote for a black man that they're not so afraid of. You know? So I thank Chuck for that. And when the history books are written, later on, you know, a couple of generations down, I believe Chuck's name will be in it. All right? So with that said, please give a nice, warm NAMM welcome, and please stand for this man. Yes. Welcome the mighty Chuck D.
Brian put me on the spot. I didn't know it was so packed in here. We was backstage, and of course, you know, like, of course, when you're looking at a screen and the full acoustics don't come through, and you're like, oh, it looks like everybody's just rehearsing. And then come out here, it's like, wow, everybody leaves Disneyland and comes across the street. Hey, what's up, bro? Yeah, really, Brian is a fine example of why this is not an individual thing. I usually don't accept individual accolades, trophies. I don't really accept anybody that says it's about me. I think my whole career, it's been because of a we, not a me. You just turned the M upside down. Right? And I think that is also the collective strength and the beginnings of this industry. Yes, we can look at NAMM being, and I was told it was over, you know, I've been coming intermittently into NAMM maybe the past 25 to 30 to 40 years and thought I was big doo-doo. And then somebody told me, nah, I've been around 120 years, dog. And then I always thought I was a visitor too, because I come from a technical background of musicians and DJs and turntablists and equipment people, and I can't play the state lottery. However, my respect, you know, big up to Keith Shockley in the house. Hank Shockley, you know, I come from that DJ background where I tell this story plenty of times. We started out as being scientists and archivists of musicians, music, DJs, radio jocks, turntablists, inventors. You know, I mean, you know, Hank has the ears of God. You know, after we finished putting everything together with the scratching of a DJ Johnny Juice, you know, on the left side, or Terminator X, and myself, Keith, and Eric Vietnam Sadler, later on Gary G. Wiz, putting together the alchemy of a whole bunch of sight sounds or whatever. The important fact is that we had to know where these sounds come from. We just didn't just throw them and say we don't know nothing. You know, just to be able to see Breakbeat Lou later on today and made it come full circle, that we knew that a DJ could be a band, like Run DMC said. But you have to have the knowledge of the records. And we knew people like Bam, you're the master of records, and we have people like seriously a pioneering mentor, DXT. Give it up for GrandMixer DXT. We played, and listen, we proudly played these records And we proudly played records that just wasn't known as, like, later on, like, you got a hip hop record. There was no such thing as a record, hip hop record. This is a record. It's a good record versus a record that might not be as good, because you learn later on that art is subjective, okay? And everybody has art in them. The process of getting art outside of yourself is a whole nother thing. And nobody taught me that more than Brian Hardgroove, who later on became the component along when the Public Enemy performances around the world, 116 countries, would say, the stuff that you guys put together in the studio, we could figure out what it actually is made of. Because really, if a guy like Hank makes the mix of all the mess, and he's the guy that makes the band go to the record, then you got something that somebody could say, oh, that's the shit right there, they're performing, wow. So it's about the knowledge of what you're doing, and all due respect to every single musician and vocalist out there, y'all. I would be pissed off if I was a musician, a technologist, to just have people just jump and use something and never give a fuck about you. And this is where I come in. I come in to understand when I see a Lord Vanessa or a DJ Jazzy Jeff, who I first happened to see in 1986, him and a young guy named Willard Smith. And y'all might know him as a TV guy, but we knew him as this motherfucker that rhymes all goddamn day. With a dude that's DJing all goddamn day. I'm like, this is hip hop's second golden age generation. They can't stop doing it. But the beginning of the knowledge and the respect for musicians. It's like, you can't, in this day, I think it's disrespectful to make light of scholarship. Because people just think they could just be what they want to be by looking in a screen and thinking just because they're a screen agent, they're a scholar too. Right? Give me 5 minutes on this. I got 5 libraries, but I'm not a scholar. I read what I like. Scholars read every goddamn thing. The good, bad, and the ugly, and then have a conversation about it. That's the same thing with technologists and DJs and musicians. They could play any goddamn thing, but they process it to a point where you can dig it, pick it up, and it's palatable to your taste. They can do anything, and they spend time at it. So they do the good, bad, and the ugly so they could possibly come up with something that could be a universal language. And that's the gift of music. And that's what I think is the core that holds the world together for our similarities and knocks the bullshit differences to the side. All right? So we as DJs and people in hip hop, we honor y'all. We honor music. We honor people that spend the time to figure out the notes. Or figure out, like Miles Davis says, there ain't no fucking bad note because you don't know if it's a bad note until the next note. Well, I was a little Howlin' Wolf on that one. That was more Howlin' Wolf than Miles. But it paid for us to know that we don't make light of a Skunk Baxter, even though he might not know shit about us, but we know who he is. We don't make light of people in Roberta Flack's band, or we got the great Will Calhoun and Muzz from Living Color and people like that. We never made light of any musician ever. That's what made us. We learned from people like DXT and the Masters and the Grandmasters of Flash and people like that, Kool Herc, like to hear DXT talk about the beginnings and DJs like Grandmaster Flowers and people like Maboya and people like that, and y'all hearing it for the first time, we're saying that these DJs never ever would make light of your musicianship. And that's what I learned from people like Keith Shockley, who hazed me as my first DJ, and I was his MC. And he said, Chuck, you don't hold a record like this. You hold the record like it's a piece of fucking gold, like this, with your finger in the middle of the hole, and your thumb at the edge of the record, and you gracefully put it into the sleeve. And when you take it out of the sleeve like this. This is paying homage to the musicianship, right? So whether it's a piece of vinyl or a CD, you don't call it a CD. You remember the era of CDs? And people just said, oh yeah, that's track 9. How disrespectful, disingenuous bullshit is that? An artist puts a title to a song with songwriters, and people just, I went to CVS or Walgreens, got me a whole crate of CDs, and that shit is track 8. What the fuck? Radio stations with their bullshit, when they become more corporate, like, we're the radio station with more music and less talk. I need a DJ to fucking tell me what the fuck it is. Don't tell me about fucking sandwiches at 2 o'clock and the goddamn weather. Let me know who's the musicians in that record so I could pay homage as we go into the what? MP3 era. And it's more than just a stack of ass files and shit that's rolling through a screen in a computer. You pay homage to the musicians, to the artists, to the name of the record, the songwriters, you know, the musicianship. That's where we come from as DJ culture, to be able to explain to the world the beauty and the gift of music. So, damn, this is a heavy motherfucker like DXT said. But it would be honored with grace to understand this is actually in praise of y'all. This ain't no me thing. It ain't never a me thing. And I'm very fortunate to have people such as Hardgrove and people that travel with me. We gotta come with this to know what the fuck we're talking about. We talk about music. No, I'm not a businessman. I am not a politician. I am an artiste. That's what I am. But I also will speak truth to power over bullshit. And that's where I come from, but I don't think that comes just from the music industry. That comes from my parents, who were 1,000%. 1,000. And they were influenced by a family that was structurally solid, but also an industry or a music business or musicians, because they from 151st Street in the 40s and the 50s, so they had to be 150% solid. Music spoke to us and it set us free, and that's what we always thought we had to set us free. So it's a we thing and not a me thing, but I don't want to be disrespectful to NAMM by saying, okay, I'm not going to pay attention. No, we all could share this. If I could break this shit in 1,000,000 pieces, I'll give it to each and every one of y'all out there. All right? So in closing, I want you to really seriously know that, okay, there's equipment, and it's time to learn the equipment, and retailers, and they have a fantastic time, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think I'll talk about it tomorrow with Brian, at least where I think where we're going right now. Artificial intelligence is not getting dumber, especially in the era of dumbassification. You as an artist and a musician have to figure out a way how to dance with this motherfucker. It won't get dumber. And you look around and society looks like it's falling the fuck off into stupidity, and artificial intelligence is coming like a locomotive on nuclear steroids in outer space. I know, I've been a graphic illustrator since 1960, when I was born. I know I've been dipping and dabbing into music, and I've heard all the talk about, well, how music is this and musicians are that, and we are being invaded. I mean, have y'all seen the speed of ChatGPT and everything else? And it ain't whack. That's the problem, it ain't whack. It's putting together some shit that makes you go like, damn. But the great Prince, my good friend, Prince Rogers Nelson, said, try your best to be on top of the technology, because if you don't, it'll be on top of your ass. That's just real talk. And one thing I know about people like, you see that DJ down there, Johnny Juice? He's always, you know, Keith Shockley, Hank Shockley, look, Gary G, they always was on top of technology. I was the dumb motherfucker. I was able to like string together and be the voice of their efforts. And I was proud to do so and still proud to do so for this day. So, in closing, right, for the second time, of course, but I wanted to get that point about artificial intelligence because you all know it's right in your fucking pocket. And one thing we know, you might not like it, but everybody got the motherfucking gadget in their pocket attached to their hip. You want to get a real emotion? Let me take your phone and smash it against the wall or smash it with one of this. I wouldn't get out this fucking room. So that's real. How do we dance with it as musicians and artists and creators and technologists and DJs and bass players and guitarists and people that say, well, damn, I ain't got to write the speech. All I got to do is pour it in the GPT blender. How do we deal with that? What's the next 2 generations or 3 generations looking like? Since they're only 3 to 5 years apart, every 5 years is a generation, whether you believe it or not. So that's the challenge. But, you know, it's hard to challenge that shit drunk. Or fucked up. Because AI ain't getting fucked up. AI ain't on fentanyl or cocaine. AI is a motherfucker, yo. So thank you. I think I'm gonna do a short little half a verse. But you know what? This is my honoring of all the greats that's coming into this conference this year because this is a turning point, y'all. 2023 is a turning point. We're 2 years past the pandemic, and what is 2024 looking like when you got a 81-year-old dude with a 78-year-old dude saying he won his title, his presidency back? So we don't know. Let the music stay free. Peace.
Chuck.